Yo, I'm Toycat, and Donald Trump has officially won the 2024 presidential election in the United States. The exact margin isn't known yet in terms of electoral vote, or whether he got the most popular votes for the first time in his election history, but we do know that he's officially going to be the next president, and so only the second person to serve non-consecutive terms, and so will officially be the 45th and then the 47th president of the United States. What a weird, quirky system you have going on over there, by the way. I think a lot of people from outside of it really do look at this and say, wait, really? You had two of the least electable, two of the least likable people that are the only real choices for president, and then you had the same the year before that, and the same the year before that, and honestly in 2012 they were both pretty cool. I didn't really like the Mitt Romney dog thing, but overall it's worth mentioning that the United States has a very weird system from the outside, and the easiest way to approach it is from a hyper-partisan angle, something the mainstream media will do in large quantities. But personally today I actually want to take a step back and say, okay, let's not just get on the pro-Trump or anti-Trump like he's the worst or he's the best thing ever train. Let's instead talk about the weird world of American politics and how people aren't just going in the hyper-partisan, I hate one person so I'll vote for the other, and how some people are actually more to the right of Donald Trump and some people are significantly less to the right of Donald Trump but still voted for them anyway, something you can see with the election results tonight. Because obviously the presidential election is the thing everyone around the world sees. As you can see, Donald Trump has won more states than Kamala Harris, and so is going to win regardless of how many votes come in. It's an interesting quirk of the US system, but another interesting quirk of the US system is by having 50 states and 50 sets of elections, you get some really intriguing different results. So look at Vermont, which is one of the bluest states in the country. As you can see, 64.4% of people wanted the blue person instead of the red person. They vote for the blue part instead of the red one, but then look at the Senate, where it's also true, they voted for Bernie Sanders, a very, you might say a very left-wing person usually, but then if we look at the governor of the state, they voted for a Republican by a 73 to 20, over 3.5 times as many people want the Republican as governor, but those same people that voted on the same day in the same place decided that they wanted a Democrat as president of the country. How does that happen? Well, I think a simple way to describe it would be, yeah, well, people's preferences are slightly different depending on the locality, like a Republican in the Northeast will be much more moderate than a Republican nationwide, and indeed, some of the people in these states would probably love to have someone to the right of Donald Trump who they could vote for instead, but they just use Donald Trump because, like, well, he's the more to the right guy, the closer to my opinion in this election, which really comes out. The most interesting example of this might actually be, in my opinion, North Carolina, which is a state which has been right-leaning for a while, which has been slowly heading to the left, and honestly, to them, they look at it and say, yeah, if you pick the right left-wing candidate, we will vote for them, right? I think North Carolina is a state that, going back to that 2012 election, it's a state that did vote for, I think it was actually 2008, it was a state that did vote for Barack Obama, and then it switched over to Mitt Romney in 2012, but it's an interesting one because it's a state that, you know, like, is therefore on the edge, right? But when it comes to Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, they vote for Trump, but then at the exact same time, they say, yeah, for our governor, though, we'll vote for a blue one, and so again, the same voters on the same day, some people were voting for Trump nationally, but for a Democrat locally. This is hugely interesting because it's basically the exact opposite of what I said before, and is a really interesting reminder that the people of America, I think even this might be useful for some Americans to hear, don't go out and specifically pick the two people who are most ideologically matched to them. Instead, these people try to ideologically match the huge differences that you get across the country. Even just looking at the presidential election results, right? You can see that there are actually, people say there's only two candidates. There's somewhere between four and, four and a dozen, depending on how you count. But we'll just say for now there's five. There are the main two, and then there's Kennedy, who apparently dropped out of the race. He specifically told people not to vote for him, and about 0.5% of people did anyway in Wisconsin. Weird choice, by the way, guys. About 0.4% of people voted for Stein, which is a Green Party to the left of the Democrats, and about a third, 0.3% of people voted for the Libertarians, who would traditionally be to the right of the Republicans, you'd expect, because, you know, they're much more on a pro-free market basis, but then on social issues it goes a different way. And my point there is, like, a party which is has very different views does get different shares all over the nation. In Pennsylvania, Stein and Oliver do evenly. As you can see, in Wisconsin, Stein does much better than Oliver. And then if you go to, like, the most educated states, like Colorado, for example, you get a situation where Kennedy has got 1%. Not showing that. Maybe they're showing their education in a protest vote there, but then you can see, look, my point is the three extra candidates all flip around in rotation in each of these places. 1.4% of Oregonians voted for a candidate who said, "Don't vote for me." I am amazed at how this actually looks. And overall, my point is to say is that what the heck is going on with America on that one, actually. That makes me realize that there are a lot of people who are really dissatisfied with the two-party system, such that they'll vote for someone that they know won't win. And, you could argue that that is also true, people voting for Oliver or for Stein, but it's still a very interesting observation. So here we go, looking at Montana, the percentages are even crazier, actually. It's such a red state that people go, yeah, I can vote for whoever I like, and Donald Trump will still get in. And so 2% of... Wait, that can't be 2% of people, right? 9,000 votes is not 2% if 40... Yeah, maybe it is, actually. Maybe I'm just crazy on this one. 1 in 50 people in the state of Montana that have been counted so far decided to vote for... That's actually fascinating by itself. I wasn't expecting to go into this today. So let's just say for now, the third-party votes are interesting, and how much they vary by state is also very interesting. So in Missouri, you can see that Chase Oliver is there at almost 1% of people who say, yeah, actually, I like Donald Trump. Overall, what they are saying as a collection, even though it varies greatly by county, of course, and city and everything like that. But it's worth mentioning that people look at it and go, yeah, if I had to pick Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, I would go there, but otherwise I'd much rather have the Libertarian or the Green Party candidate. I really don't like these two candidates indeed. I think the best example of this, though, I spent some time living in Nevada, and I think this was the real eye-opening experience as a European. They're like, oh yeah, even though America has such a similarity in culture between the two ends of the country, I mean, it really can't be overstated looking at it like that. It's crazy how similar Florida can be to Washington, despite the distance between them. If you, to turn this into a slight geography video, the distance between Florida and Seattle is 4,334 kilometers. So let's just say 4,300. The distance from where I live right now to 4,300 kilometers from here, I think we can get to Azerbaijan. Now we can go past Azerbaijan, we can end up in Turkmenistan or Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan if we really want to, or deep into Siberia. And I'm just saying, Siberia is very different to London. Uzbekistan, I hate to admit it, but it's very different to London. But if you're between Florida and Washington, it's like, yeah, there are slightly fewer Cubans in one than the other, and that is intriguing, right? On a cultural level, how similar the states can be, but also when you look at the electoral results, you realize how different so many things are. So, for example, in Nevada, it's a state, even in the biggest city, that is still leaning about 50-50 between blue and red, but the exact same state on the exact same day, I have to keep saying that because it's interesting, actually had some questions on whether they wanted ranked choice voting, whether they wanted to get rid of the two-party system, and and have actual choices between more people, and they said, nah, actually, by 55 to 45%. I think that's a real bummer. I think that if you are someone who is dissatisfied with these two people, not everyone loves these two people, everyone loves these two people too, they're some of my favorites, but if you're dissatisfied between these two people, you'd figure the best thing you could do when these are your two choices, rather than calling him a communist and her a fascist, that's what people say, that is the order in which they say it too, rather than going ahead and saying those sorts of things, wouldn't it be better if you actually go like, okay, what if we had other choices? Right now, voting other choices means voting for a guy who has dropped out of the race, apparently, but what if we could have actual people who know that they can take your first choice vote, and then when you really get down to it, you can have these guys be your second or third or fifth choice, just your way of saying, okay, I prefer her than him or prefer him than her, but I'd much rather vote for someone who actually matches my values. And so it's interesting that that didn't pass. It didn't pass anywhere in the country. I think Oregon had a similar measure, and there was a similar one in Maine, maybe. It's somewhere in the Northeast. I don't think it was Maine. They already have ranked choice voting. But what is very interesting is the fact that at the same time that a state can go seemingly towards Donald Trump, it's still too close to cool. There's more votes that have got to come in, etc., etc. But while this is happening, and wait, none of these look at this. This is a state that literally votes for none of these candidates. They didn't even vote for a third party. They just said, nah, I'm good. I came out to the polls just to say that I don't like both of these people. So it's interesting that the same people who would vote for Donald Trump, a Republican, over the Democrat, something which, like if you've been on the internet, people are like, oh, you literally have to hate women to vote for the not women, because, otherwise they'll take away women's rights or something. The same state is like, actually, no, but we really, the thing that you would get, that women, that you might call women's rights, but the right to have a abortion, which is usually you have to be like, oh yeah, the right to choose, the right to, and it's like, no. We went to, you should have the ability to do this for yourself. Is this your choice or is this society's choice? Everyone went, yeah, actually it's your choice. You can have that by a ratio of about 2-to-1. It is crazy just how much people can have views which are slightly more nuanced than you might expect. And usually it's hard, even though we know it's true, it's hard to prove. But it's fascinating that, yeah, a lot of people who voted for, the blue team, even though the red team were yelling about how voter ID is so important, people on the blue team, by a large margin, had to also vote to increase voter ID margins. There are so many interesting measures to dive into that the US voted for, and I think the most interesting thing that you can take if you're into politics is that, yeah, actually, on a nationwide level, you give people exactly 2 choices, they're gonna pick some weird things. But once you get down to, by the way, also, it's worth mentioning that even though Trump probably wins by some very tiny percent nationally, it looks as though the actual control of making laws in the country is going to go towards the Republican Party by and large. They've definitely won the Senate, and the House is looking like it is going in their direction too. The point here is to say is that it is, as a country, the American people, maybe on a case-by-case basis, but have decided that, yeah, the red party's offerings were better than the blue party's ones, and that is a really interesting takeaway to have if you are in the United States, or even for the rest of the world, because, to the rest of the world, this party looks like they're, pretty centrist, or maybe even some people say, I called them the left-wing party yesterday, and I got comments like, no, Toy Cat, they would be center-right in any other country in the world, and it's like, but they're not any other country in the world. This is America, and in America they've got a lot of quite quirky opinions that are to the right of many other countries. It's one of the things that makes their economy so dynamic and perhaps so successful. You might argue if you believed in that, but the point here is that the country has a very different profile, and that even if a party looks like it is to the right of the, even if it is where it is and it's not winning the votes, it means that there are a few issues that need to be faced. One of those might be credibility. Maybe people don't believe anything that comes from the left-wing side. Maybe they think that they don't care about them as voters. If you look at the voting groups that have switched from Kamala to Donald Trump, there's some interesting things in there. But maybe you could say that equally looking at this looking at these results, that when you see states like when you see the Vermonts of the world that are like, yeah, we need a Republican governor, and we'll vote for a very left-wing senator if he is pro-gun. I believe in, healthcare and equality and the right to defend myself and to bear arms. And you better have both those things locked down. It's an intriguing fact, in my opinion, that, then the reverse. A lot of people in North Carolina are like, yeah, when it comes to running the state, I want to have, a nice place to, I think that's very important. But when it comes to running the country, I want a good place to do business, or whatever the case may be. There are so many different weird mishmashes of identities and beliefs that this map kind of shows, and I think that is the most important thing to take from this, is that getting this many people to agree on anything is kind of crazy, and that if you lose it, it means you picked the wrong collection of, I guess the wrong coalition of policies. If you don't have something that genuinely makes the Rust Belt states believe in you, then you're going to lose them, even if it's by very tight margins. You need something that makes the West Coast happy, although you could argue with margins like this, you could literally, Donald Trump could run for the blue team and maybe he'd win there too, right? You could make an argument that actually the most important thing to do if you're being strategic is to look at what is it that the 2% of people in Georgia that switched over from this time to last time, what is it that they need most so we can switch them back again? Or the 13% in Florida, man, that used to be a swing state. Or the 4% in North Carolina, because those are the questions you kind of have to be working out. And to come at it from some form of ideological basis is probably important too. But that's a deeper debate about how politics works. And so for now, let's just say, isn't it interesting how nuanced the views can be on a state-by-state level, and then realize that goes down another layer again, because as much as we like to group together and say, yeah, there's 150 million voters and they all love one of these two choices, The truth is that even when you go down to the state level, by the way, I think this is the most important fact. California is the bluest state, but if you look at it, it's still like there are lots of very red places in it. They don't have many people in them. Like, what is that? 2,887 voters for Trump versus 2,700 for Harris. It's very interesting to me that like when you look at even the reddest state, you're gonna find some state, as long as they have a city, you're gonna find a city in there that is actually blue, because that is the thing that seemingly unites people in their voting preferences far more than anything else. Look at that, 65.9% versus 31.1%. And then on the other side, in the middle here, it's 72 or 80 or 87 to 10%. There is a huge difference in how people vote on not just the state level, but inside of their state. And that's why I think the idea of having like a candidate, having a person that runs and says, yeah, I will somehow be the person that runs all of this, and that you have to claim at the very least, right, that you're going to do really significant things to change how all of your lives will work that are more or less the same across the board. The ultimate president would be one that says, ho, this is too much for me. I think what I'm going to do for the next 4 years is let you guys work out what you want to do for yourself. But maybe that's my ideological basis shining through. With that said, I hope that you enjoyed today's video. Let me know what you think. Are you excited for 4 more years of Trump? What's he gonna get up to? I don't know. I mean, what I do know is, sorry, I was excited to point out that Minnesota is the state that has been blue for the longest. Because it's the only fact that I can store about American politics easily, because it's the one state that didn't flip during 1984, during the landslide or whatever. Anyway, which was the last landslide that American politics has really had, by the way. Isn't that an interesting point too? That nowadays every single election, even though this one was like a bigger win than people were expecting for Trump, right? It's still 4% in it. Americans are getting to the point now, and when was the last election that wasn't won by single-digit percent points? So this is 4%. This is 7%. Oh, this is 2%. This is 0.5%. This is about 9%, but there's a third party. This is about 6%. This is about 7%. It literally, this is the last time that the country had more than a 10% margin, and even then it was about 6 to 4. For every 6 people voting for one party, there were 4 people voting for the other. It is I feel like the hotelier theorem of cities, but the idea that like people are moving closer and closer together and trying to capture more and more vote share. Parties are getting more efficient at campaigning, you might say, and it means that no matter who wins in a given election, no matter who wins in 2028, I can guarantee that about 4% of America, only about 4% more of Americans will be happy than sad, and about 46 to 48% of the country is going to feel like the person who they need to win, or the country is going to go into a big black hole, is going to do terribly, and that's something that should probably be thought about and addressed. Or maybe this is a good thing, because at least when people think it's the end of the world, they vote in higher numbers. Like in 2012, when there were, like I said, 2 decent candidates, people stopped voting because they're like, it's fine, I don't need to vote. And then when we had oh my god, it's the Antichrist or the other Antichrist, people started voting more and more and more, and it looks as though from the voting numbers so far, the voting turnout is at least flat, if not up. And so maybe what you need in American politics to get people to actually participate in democracy is 2 people that people hate. Or maybe that's a bad idea. But you know what isn't a bad idea? Ooh, we should go through all of the ballot measures, shouldn't we? What's Alabama up to? Transfers control of land to the Franklin Board County of Education? Oh, good job for them. But yeah, I feel like my end point from this video is, man, isn't politics quirky? Okay, thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Second channel, don't care. Goodbye.